In a museum, we see works of art as fixed objects in a collection, but works of public art engage us also by drawing attention to their surroundings. That applies to a work of public art that recently took shape at Central Wharf Park near the New England Aquarium and a parking garage. You might think of it as an arrangement of socially distant building blocks, their smooth, straight-line surfaces attached to the rough features of river boulders that are not quite toppling. These are also places where you can stop and sit down. The temporary installation by the Mexican artist Jose Dávila was organized by the public art organization Now and There. We'd like to welcome its curator, Pedro Alonzo, and executive director, Kate Gilbert. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Pedro, I want to start with you because I'd like you to talk about the impression that this installation makes on people. And I have to confess that when I went to see it, I didn't even realize this space was a park. So the difference begins right there. So walk us through that sense of difference.
Yes, well, thank you for having us on the show. It's really, it feels to me like we brought a much needed dose of color and warmth from Mexico. Jose is based in Guadalajara, Mexico, and it's a city in Mexico that's actually known for its ideal climate, really, beautiful architecture, amazing use of color in the architecture. So this is Jose bringing a bit of his childhood. He grew up in this city that is also the city of Mexico's most famous architect, Luis Barragan, who is won the Pritzker Prize. He designed it in the 1930s. He designed a park that's known as the Red Park that has red colored concrete throughout it. And Jose used to go there as a child and play. So when we invited him to do something in Boston, and we talked about, this park that functions as a corridor, at the end of this park, at one end you have the greenway, at the other end you have the aquarium. So this park is a natural corridor lined with oak trees that people walk through. And he saw it as the opportunity to put these bright colored geometric blocks, not in the way, but in the path, so that people could have the opportunity to engage with the art. He's putting it in their path so that they can experience it. And that's what this piece is about.
And those red blocks, red is a warm color. Kandinsky says it's incandescent. So I mean, this is warmth.
Yes. I like to joke that it looks like it'll melt the snow. It probably won't, but.
Kate, the timing of this is also important. I know this is supposed to have something to do with the pandemic, but what exactly?
That we can still have experiences of spontaneity, that we can still get together safely outside. It's not about the pandemic, it's about how we are acting in the pandemic and how we want to take any lessons that we are learning from this pandemic about how to be together, how to create a more just and equitable societies. That is what this work and a lot of the public art that we commission is about. It's about helping us imagine a better future. And as Pedro says, giving us a little warmth and something fun to do in these, difficult times.
I guess the other thing is this changes the sense of what it is to be in public. And that can mean different things. Being in public can be gregarious, but it can also mean that layer of isolation, that reserve when you're around people you don't know. How does that equation work in this park?
We have yet to see with this piece how that's going to work in COVID. The piece that Pedro curated prior to this, Growth Rings, really brought people into, and that was by Oscar Toison, really brought people to the park and asked them to sit and look up and to look down, to look up at the trees, down at the ground, making that connection between sea and downtown. I think this piece is going to do the same. I hope that it does also bring people together in conversation. But that's going to be seen as people are wearing masks in these times. We're not sure how they will actually interact.
Pedro, there's a name for this installation, and it's this phrase, to the time it's art, to the art is freedom. That was associated with the secessionists in Vienna more than 100 years ago, sort of a counterculture among artists. Why make that connection with this particular installation?
Well, it was Jose called me and said, "Hey, I've got this idea for a title." And I loved the title because it's really about how, you know, we tend to take things for granted, and how we in many ways are taking democracy for granted, and that we need to have artists reminding us of these things, and we all need to work actively to defend the things we believe in. And that's one of the things that the secessionists were famous for, grouping together to create the first space to display to display contemporary art of living artists versus a more academic approach from the traditional institutions. And here he's reminding us that we can't take democracy, freedom for granted, and the role of artists in helping us navigate difficult times.
Kate, you know, the title also refers to a building in Vienna where it's almost like going into the catacombs as opposed to going to a normal museum. This particular installation at Central Wharf Park, it's been described as a sculptural sanctuary. That also is different from a museum. Explain, what is the difference and why is it so important?
Well, right now with a museum, because of COVID and the restrictions on gathering, you need to get a ticket in advance. You need to show up at the right time. We watch people running to the aquarium to make their time ticket. This is different. You can come anytime you'd like. You can walk there, you can bike there, you can, you know, however you feel comfortable getting there. And you can have your own sanctuary, as you're saying, your own experience, looking at these materials, thinking about all of the references that the artist brings to the work.
Pedro, I want to ask you something else about the impressions from the installation, because when I'm looking at it, I am taking in the red blocks, the boulders, but I'm also looking at the cobblestone pavement. I'm looking at these autumn leaf dunes that are leaning against the different pieces. I'm looking at the trees, and not just trees, they are an arrangement of trees, something artificial as well as natural. So, I mean, what's going on in somebody's head when they're getting drawn to all those details?
Well, I think one of the most important things is actually the color of the pieces. This is the first time that Jose has ever made a work with color. Normally he uses, you know, the sort of the traditional concrete, that dull gray. And when he began to send us ideas, Kate pointed out, she said, you know, it'd be great if there was some color, you know, because that space is pretty gray, especially in the winter. And it was one of, I think, the highlights of the Oscar Toison piece, the growth rings, was that they were this very beautiful natural wood color that also stood out. And so color is really important because when you approach it, you get this blast of color and energy that is very inviting. And then as you walk in, you begin to notice everything else. You begin to notice that there are these rocks that look like they're precariously balanced. And then you might notice that the blocks are a very similar color to the bricks that surround us, and that those river stones are granite, also a material that you see throughout the city, right, in the buildings. So in a way, it is a reference to the architecture that surrounds us. Mm-hmm. And as you come in, you start to notice the leaves, you start to notice the patina building, watermarks, the prints of the leaves that begin to accumulate on the piece. So it begins to build and gather this character. When we first arrived to see I picked up Jose at the airport, and when we first arrived to see the piece, there were a group of girls, teenage girls, sitting on several of the blocks, hanging out, basically. And Jose said, this is fantastic. It works, right? This artwork works. I said, well, why do you say that? He said, because when young people gravitate to it and understand it and engage it, you know, kids are very authentic. They only gravitate to things that they believe in, that they feel comfortable with, excited about. So he said, this is a sign of success.
Kate, I can imagine people coming up to this and looking at those boulders and saying, what is it with those things? They look like they're going to fall. Is that supposed to mean something? What do you make of it?
We do hope that. We hope that, and as Pedro was talking about the color, that they make that association with what the artist called the chromatic experience of Boston, which is very much the red brick of Boston, and that they see these boulders about to fall. As Pedro was alluding to, kids know just what to do, and they come up and they touch, they want to engage with the work and see if those boulders stay on. Everyone else wants to do the same thing, but we've been taught not to touch the art. So they come up and they will subtly sort of touch and push. And that's exactly what we hope people will do and experience, is that they will come and make it their own. They make it their lunch spot. They feel free to jump all over it. It's completely, there for people to do what they want with, because as the title alludes to, each era needs its art, and art needs its freedom. So that art is there for us to imprint on, for us to decide how to use that park and our natural spaces going forward, and to respond back to. So, we just hope people will come, enjoy it, get outside, and learn how to come together in these times.
And you've just explained how you turn a space into a place. Thank you both very much for being with us. Kate Gilbert and Pedro Alonzo from Now and There. We'll have more news in just a moment.